Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Garden Wall Perspectives. And today, we're going to be discussing episodes 7 and 8 of Over the Garden Wall, The Ringing of the Bell, and Babes in the Wood. Now, when we last left our valiant heroes, they managed to make it to Adelaide of the Pasture's home. The only problem was, it turns out Adelaide wasn't the kind lady that Beatrice made her out to be. It turns out that Adelaide was actually a witch of sorts, and the reason Beatrice was bringing the boys to them was because she made a deal with, was because Beatrice and Adelaide made a deal. It turns out that Beatrice was, as we learned a couple episodes prior, Beatrice was actually human once. However, she wound up being turned into a bluebird when she threw a rock at a bluebird, and the subsequent creature cursed Beatrice and her whole family, and subsequently turning them into bluebirds also. As such, Adelaide does have the means of transforming Beatrice and her family back via these magic scissors that if they clips the wings of Beatrice and her family, it'll turn them human again. But Adelaide would only give these scissors to Beatrice on the chance if she gave her a servant, in this case, children. And so that Beatrice was planning to give Wirt and Greg over to her, but after all the journey she's had with them, she had a last-minute change of heart, but sadly that change of heart came too little too late. As the boys saw Beatrice and Adelaide talking, and when Adelaide revealed what she wanted the boys for, well, the boys didn't like it, or more specifically, Wirt didn't like it. And so, while Beatrice ultimately managed to finish Adelaide off, unfortunately, by that point, Wirt and Greg had managed to escape, even taking the scissors with them since they had been tied up and they needed something to cut their ropes. As such, Beatrice was left alone at Adelaide's, and ultimately the last we saw of Wirt and Greg was them wandering further into the unknown, with Wirt now even more unsure than he was at the beginning. Which is where the ringing of the bell comes in, as they're still wandering through the wood and it's starting to rain. They really have nowhere to go, and while Greg still thinks that they can keep going, they'll find their way home eventually, Wirt is clearly losing a bit of faith. He tries to say, "Oh no, I got this. We don't need Beatrice. I can figure a way out. But it's clear that he's not even confident in his own words, and he's only really saying that to keep himself up. However, Wirt and Greg's conversation has kind of cut short, as while they're walking along, their path is blocked by a fallen tree. And when they examine the tree, it turns out it was cut down, which ultimately reveals that, yep, it was the woodsman, who immediately comes out and begins, I want to just say, harassing Wirt and Greg, specifically Wirt, and he pretty much just delivers the warning to Wirt that the beast is aware of them, he's hot in their tail, and that if they want to fend off the beast, they need to be strong in body and spirit. And in his own words, if they fall ill or lose hope, then the beast will claim them, so they need to be wary. However, Wirt manages to fend the woodsman off by kicking his lantern again, and so he manages to run away following after Greg. As such, as they're running off, they decide they have to prioritize getting out of the rain, and they ultimately do find a place, as they find this what looks to be an old abandoned house in the middle of the woods. As such, they go in there and they light candles, set a fire, and ultimately just make themselves comfortable. But as they go through this place, they find that the house seems to have these barrels in them that are full of black turtles. Now, this is kind of a thing that I neglected to mention in the previous episode. Remember the wolf that only turned into this big monstrous thing when it ate a turtle? Well, the thing is, the reason why it seemed to react the way it did was because the turtle was drenched in edelwood oil, which in turn made it look black. And so when Wirt and Greg find the crate full of the black turtles, they look exactly the same. So it's clear that these are turtles drenched in edelwood oil. But ultimately, that's not their main concern. Their main concern is that the crate's even there, which means that someone's already claimed this place. And sure enough, that's ultimately confirmed as a girl seems to come from a back room and says that she's done with the chores, and so at first she thinks that Wirt and Greg are someone named Auntie Whispers, but when she sees it's them, she starts freaking out and saying they have to get out of here or something. Or actually, no, she asks who the hell they are, and Wirt and Greg introduce themselves, though Greg says they're there to burgle. But as they're introducing themselves, they end up hearing someone coming up to the house, and so The girl, who we later learn is named Lara, not Lana. No, it's Lana. Yeah, it's Lana. She tells them to go to hide in the barrel of black turtles, and so when they do, we soon meet Auntie Whispers, this very big woman with huge eyes, black sharp teeth, and who just seems to be talking like this, like some strange and unusual being. And she pretty much is just, and so as she comes in, and so as Auntie Whispers comes in, she begins questioning Lana about if there are any visitors here. Lana says that there weren't, but Auntie Whispers sees right through her and says, "No, you're a good child, but you are lying to me." And she tells Lana that she better not be lying to her because they don't want to have any more bodies on their hands. Although she doesn't use those words, but put simply, she makes it clear that if there are visitors here, then they are most likely doomed. And she even mentioning later that there are the bones of victims prior in the basement or something. As such, sorry, there's a fly here. As such, while Lana is still claiming that there are no visitors here, that everything is fine, ultimately Auntie Whispers compels her to tell the truth by pulling out a bell and ringing it. And upon hearing the bell, Lana seems to go into a trance and tells Auntie Whispers where Wirt and Greg are hiding. As such, Auntie Whispers goes over to the crate where they are, and sees the turtles and thinks, "Oh, and you meant visitors, you meant the turtles, oh, of course." And we soon learn why her teeth are so black and decrepit. Auntie Whispers actually eats the turtles. It's kind of creepy. Either way, she's satisfied with the answer and believes, okay, fine, there's no one here. And so she, with that chore done, she tasks Lana with sweeping off with cleaning the entire floorboard. As she tells her she has to keep busy lest she stray and fall to evil and so forth. And Lana says it's okay. It's like, I get it, okay. And ultimately, but as such, Auntie Whispers just says, while you're doing that, I'm going to go take a nap, so see you later. So Auntie Whispers goes upstairs, and Wirt and Greg come out, and Wirt is actually a little surprised that Auntie Whispers is making her do all this stuff. Lana says that Auntie Whispers makes her do it because if she doesn't, she'll be swayed by evil and so forth. Although Wirt thinks that's a bit loaded BS, especially since it looks like Lana is not doing well physically, as she's clearly sick and not in the right place. Wirt thinks this is not a good thing and thinks that she should see a doctor, but again, Auntie Whispers says no. Lana says no. Auntie Whispers wouldn't allow that. She thinks that outside people would lead me astray. As such, Wirt just thinks this is just not right. And he thinks that why don't you just run away, but Lana says that every single time she finishes another chore, Auntie Whispers comes down and gives her something else. She is constantly busy, always working. And so, as such, Wirt decides, why doesn't he help? He offers to say that if they work together, they should get the job done quicker, and so, in the time between when Auntie Whispers in the time between when they finish it, when Auntie Whispers wake up, maybe Lana can make a run for it. And so Lana somewhat reluctantly decides to let Wirt help. And so they spend the next few hours just clearing the floor, taking care of everything. But as they do this, Greg is just kind of on standby, watching everything and kind of rolling his eyes at Wirt. But as Wirt and Lana are still clearing the floor, Greg's frog ends up leaping upstairs with Greg following after. Unfortunately, when they go up there, they are disturbed Auntie Whispers, and so Auntie Whispers comes storming down and realizes that there actually are visitors there, and she begins warning Wirt and Greg that they're doomed as long as they are here, doomed, and so they immediately freak out, and Wirt and Greg and Lana end up running into a back room and lock the door. However, Auntie Whispers, on top of that, well, before they do that, Auntie Whispers tries to compel Lana to come back over to her, even trying to use the bell again, but for some reason she can't find the bell, which is when the trio ends up running into the back room. Ultimately, Auntie Whispers says, no, you shouldn't be alone with her, she will spell your doom, and when Wirt hears that, he's thinking, what the hell is she talking about? And it turns out the reason why Auntie Whispers was reacting the way she was because she wasn't the one killing people, it was Lana. It turns out that Lana is possessed by an evil spirit, and what compels the spirit and ultimately as long as Lana is busy and tired, the spirit can't really do anything. But with the work done, with the chores finished, and nothing else to do, the spirit manages to take control of Lana and compels her to try and kill Wirt and Greg, hence why the bones. As such, Wirt and Greg manage to make a run for it and run out to the bog, with Lana following after, who I actually do like. Lana does say that she's sorry for doing this, but the spirit commands her and all that. But ultimately, Wirt, Greg, and the frog end up falling into a bog, with Lana following after. However, as they're running, Greg says, "Why don't we try my plan?" And it turns out Greg knows where the bell is. The frog ate it. As Greg ends up holding up the frog, shaking it, and the ringing of the bell compels Lana to listen. Wirt sees this and decides, wait, we can use this to our advantage, and so he takes the frog, says, "The bell commands you," and he commands the spirit to leave Lana and never return. And so, that's what happens. The spirit is expelled, it disappears forever, and Lana is cured. She's actually very happy about this because, well, it's all good now, she's free. Doesn't have to be worried about led astray, but when Auntie Whispers does catch up with the group, she's somewhat disappointed, as when I first watched it, when I saw this, I thought, why didn't she cure her in the first place? But it might have something to do with the fact that Auntie Whispers would feel lonely, as while Lana said that Auntie Whispers wasn't her real aunt, she was pretty much the closest thing she had to family. And it could be the idea that Auntie Whispers was afraid that if she used the bell outright to cure Lana, then Lana would leave her, which is a somewhat selfish reason, but at the very least, when Auntie Whisper sees that Lana is cured, she doesn't want to try and hold her back. She does say, "I guess you don't really need me anymore," but Lana says, "No, you're my family, I'm always going to need you," which, it's really a kind of sweet, touching scene, especially when they both hug. And so, with everything said and done, Wirt and Greg are about to head on their way, though Auntie Whispers warns them to not trust her sister Adelaide because she's wicked and cannot be trusted. She obviously doesn't know. And so, Wirt, Greg, and the frog end up going on their way. However, even with this win under their belt, Wirt is still not doing well. And he finally admits to Greg he does not have a plan. He doesn't know where they're going, and he thinks that it's only a matter of time before they're even more lost. He doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't know where to go. He doesn't know who to trust, and it's clear he's starting to lose faith. Something that the Beast very much likes, because, well, as they're wandering away, the Beast is actually glad that that Wirt is starting to lose hope, because he wants to turn them into Edelwood trees to light the lantern. The woodsman is still against it and even says there has to be another way, but the Beast just tells the woodsman, "No, there's only one way, mine, and those kids are going to be mine." So, yeah, that's where that episode ends, which is where we get to Babes in the Wood, and this is the one that gets the most freaky. In this case, Wirt and Greg are still traveling through the unknown as we catch up with them kind of crossing a river in an outhouse. I'll just let that sink in for a second. But while Greg is still in high spirits and ready to keep going, find their way home, etc., it's clear that Wirt is very much kind of lost hope and altogether, as he genuinely believes that at this point they're not getting home. They're lost for good, and he has really nowhere else to turn to. And as such, while Greg is still trying to stay in high spirits, Wirt is still not really listening, and to the point where when they finally cross the river, Wirt pretty much tries to take Greg's positive attitude down by saying, "Do you know why we're even here at all? It's because you were goofing off." Which, that's probably the first time we get we finally get an explanation about how they got into the unknown. But ultimately, Wirt just decides he wants to give up. He doesn't care anymore, and he even tells Greg, "Do whatever the hell you want, I don't care." Which Greg interprets as, "Oh my god, I'm the leader!" As such, Wirt just still goes whatever, he wants to take a nap, so he ends up resting by a tree, and Greg decides he'll take a nap too, and so Greg and the frog end up kind of using leaves as blankets, and they end up falling asleep by Wirt. Which is where we get to the real meat of this episode. We're getting to a trip. In this case, we end up seeing Greg's dream. And it's kind of weird. TV tropes would describe Greg as a cloud cuckoo lander. And this episode kind of sort of confirms that, as Greg ends up dreaming about being whisked away by these weird magical cartoon imps and animals who talk and sound like little kids, and brought to their kingdom in the sky called Cloud City. It's weird, and it's just so balls to the walls trippy. I wouldn't call it like acid trip insane, like things are just going all insane, but it is very odd, especially when while Greg is there, he just is goofing off with all the denizens of Cloud City and just having a good time. He's orchestrating a band, singing along with them, enjoying himself. But halfway through the dream, that kind of gets interrupted when the antics end up unleashing something called the Old Wind, the Old North Wind, I think. North Wind, which ultimately ends up coinciding with reality, as in the woods. In the woods, while Greg and the Frog are sleeping, a cold wind comes in, and it's starting to cause everyone to start shiver and be cold. Now, in the realm of the dream, Greg ends up beating back the Old North Wind and saving Cloud City. And so, as thanks, he ends up meeting the Queen of Cloud City, who tells him that for his deeds, she shall grant him one wish. And so, Greg wishes that he can go home. And the lady says that she can do that, but only for Greg. It turns out that Wirt's kind of too far gone, which starts making me wonder if this is really a dream or not, because the Queen of Cloud City ends up showing a vision of Wirt in the unknown, and as he sleeps, you can see vines of Edelwood starting to grow from him. Yeah, it's becoming clear that that at this point he's almost ready to be taken. As such, Greg sees this and he thinks, no, I can't let that happen, and there has to be something I can do. And so he decides to make a different request for the Queen. We don't end up hearing it, but based on the Queen's reaction and what happens when Greg wakes up, we could probably guess. As such, the Queen says that she can make the task done, and so it cuts back to the waking world as Wirt is still sleeping there, his body actually surrounded by Edelwood vines. But Greg ultimately wakes up and stands over Wirt and tells him, listen, Wirt, I'm sorry that I kept goofing off. I'm sorry I wasn't a good leader, but I know what I need to do now, so please take care of my frog. Wirt just thinks, oh, whatever, I don't care, and so Greg says, okay, I'll see you later. I gotta go fix things. And as he wanders off, we soon hear the beast calling to Greg and said, come along, we have work to do. Yep, Greg has turned himself over to the beast. Something Wirt immediately realizes as he's immediately roused awake, and at this point, it's been, while they were sleeping, the cold wind wound up bringing in snow, and so the entire ground is covered with snow. But that's not really Wirt's main priority, as he realizes Greg's missing, and he ends up ripping off the Edelwood vines and starts looking around for Greg, but he can't find him. And he just gets more and more frantic, more and more worried, starts calling out for Greg, until he ends up accidentally running out onto a frozen lake. And as he's on the frozen lake, he ends up falling through and almost drowning. Ultimately, he gets pulled out of the lake by a fisherman, who was actually a fish, and it turns out the one that helped get the fisherman to find Wirt was Beatrice. Yeah, ever since the boys pretty much ditched Beatrice, she's been spending the last 2 episodes flying around the unknown looking for them. And so as such, once Beatrice pulls Wirt out of the frozen lake, she begins asking Wirt where Greg is, but Wirt is not in a good state physically. He's freezing, he's shaking, and it's clear hypothermia is starting to set in. And ultimately, as Beatrice keeps questioning him, he eventually passes out right there in the boat, with the episode ending with Beatrice trying to rouse him awake. So yeah, kind of a depressing ending, but ultimately, what are my thoughts on these episodes? These are definitely the downward turn episodes. If last week's episode, Lullaby in Frogland, was definitely where things took a hard swerve into depressing territory, well, these are the episodes that definitely clinch that. As what, like, well, first let's start with the ringing of the bell. The ringing of the bell on its surface still kind of feels like another adventure into that. Yeah, this still feels like a regular Over the Garden Wall episode, as it features Wirt and Greg encountering something strange and bizarre, thinking it's one thing, but ultimately learning it's another. And in this case, it involves them meeting a girl who's seemingly being enslaved by her horrid witch of an aunt, who turns out not even really her aunt. But as the episode goes along, it turns out the aunt is trying to keep everyone else safe from her. And as a result of this, it leads to them having to once again think of a way out of the situation, and ultimately they do manage to come out on top, as they manage to free Lana from the possessing spirit that was controlling her. And in the end, we do learn that and in the end, Lana and Auntie Whisper's relationship is stronger because, well, in the end, Auntie Whispers did genuinely care about Lana, even if she did act a bit selfishly in how she handled Lana's possession with a spirit. As such, it does still have somewhat of a heartwarming ending to it, especially with Lana and Auntie Whispers embracing, but throughout it all, there's also an underlying sense of just depression. As at the beginning of the episode, Wirt is clearly at his wit's end, and he says he has a plan, but clearly he doesn't. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't know what he and Greg should be doing. He's genuinely lost, both figuratively and literally. And the more he tries thinking of a plan, the more things don't work out. Even when he thinks he does have things figured out, it kind of comes back to bite him in the ass. And one example being Lana. He thought that they were on top of everything, finding a place in the middle of the woods that they can hunker down, helping this poor young girl from being used and exploited by her terrible aunt, only to learn that the terrible aunt was actually very much nice, and that the girl was the one they should have been afraid of. Probably capped off by the fact that it was Greg that came up with the strategy that ultimately fixed things in the end. Greg was able to put two and two together and realize that the bell was the thing that they could use to control Beatrice, not Beatrice. Beatrice was the bird. Greg is the one that figured out that the bell is what they could use to control Lana. And when it becomes clear that Lana is the one that's killing everybody, Greg is the one that starts using the bell to keep her in line, which, well, ultimately Wirt is the one that shakes the bell and tells Lana. I keep getting their names mixed up. Wirt is the one that tells Lana to ultimately stop being possessed, or at the very least he commands the spirit to stop possessing her. In the end of the day, it was Greg's quick thinking that wound up getting them out on top. Wirt was the one that got them into this situation, and by the end he has to face facts. He has no idea what he's doing, and it's very clear that if he keeps trying to figure things out, odds are he's just going to keep making it worse. Which is kind of depressing, because you have seen Wirt so far actually be rather resourceful, but odds are he's still reeling from the fact that he trusted Beatrice, and Beatrice was walking them into a trap. So he most likely is having more self-doubts, which I kind of think works. I think actually works. Again, he trusted Beatrice as a friend. He talked to her. He opened up more to her. And then to learn that she was actually planning to sell them up the river, so to speak. Yeah, I could kind of see why that would lead to more self-doubts, especially since they're still in a place they know nothing about. And on top of that, like I said, with the mess-ups with Lana and Auntie Whispers, and ultimately him not coming up with a plan to defeat Lana / save her, yeah, I can kind of see why he would be kind of as down in the dumps as he is. And that's exemplified in the next episode, Babes in the Wood. This episode, from start to finish, just feels uncomfortable. Even the stuff with Greg's dream, while amusing and fun and just kind of reeking of kid cartoon shenanigans, also kind of just feels off. When you see Greg get whisked off into the sky as he enters his dream world, it almost feels like that this is his dying dream. Now, I know that TV trope says that it could possibly be that it's implied it's a dying dream, but I don't really see how it could be, because they weren't cold until it started snowing, and the dream started long before it started snowing. But at the very least, it does feel like Greg is just kind of escaping from the terrible situation into his subconscious. And his dream is just very much all over the place and just weird. It's not like mind trippy weird, but it also just feels depressing as he's having this nice dream about hanging out with all these cute talking animals and cutie patooties and singing and dancing, while in the outside world, he and his brother are slowly freezing to death. It gets even worse when, by the end, when Greg admits that he was just goofing off and he didn't know, and he doesn't know what he's doing either. At the very when it comes down to it, when he learns that Wirt is probably doomed because he gave up hope, Greg is willing to sacrifice himself. And it's actually, I think, a very good character moment for Greg. At the beginning of these vlogs, I mentioned how Greg is just kind of overall a jovial kid who really doesn't fully understand the ramifications of the situation they're in, and in some points is annoying. Well, I think this episode winds up kind of nailing in one of Greg's most adamant character traits. His positivity. He's a good kid, and ultimately, what he wants to do is, as he said in an earlier episode, just make the world a nicer place. It's just that the problem is, with that mindset comes self-sacrifice. And when he learns that his brother is most likely going to be losing his life because he lost hope, Greg immediately decides, I have to fix this. And if that means I gotta hand myself over to the bad guy, then so be it. Because at the end of the day, he's content in at least knowing that his actions will save his brother and potentially himself in the long run. But more so his brother, which actually really kind of which in a way is a nice character moment, but also really makes just kind of hits home just how desperate these kids are now. They had first they tried following the woodsman's advice, but then when they felt that he was a threat, they stopped listening to him. Then they followed Beatrice, who for a few episodes was telling them, no, it's okay, Adelaide will send you home, only to learn that Adelaide wanted to turn them into servants. And now finally his brother, who he thinks, oh, you can do this, you can make everything great, well, Wirt says, no, I don't know what's going on, we are screwed, and I don't think we'll ever get home. At that point, their options are kind of run dry. So of course, if it's gotten to the point where Greg thinks that they need to turn to the Beast for ways home, yeah, at that point you know that things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. And by the end of the episode, when Wirt is freaking out looking for Greg and ultimately almost dies due to hypothermia from falling into a lake, yeah, at that point, you're just wondering what the hell is going to happen next. So, yeah, overall, I do think both of these episodes are still really good. The Ringing of the Bell is a nice, it's like I said, it has the typical over the garden wall curiosity to it, especially with having an uncomfortable situation with Auntie Whispers and Lana before once again turning things on its head when it turns out Auntie Whispers is the one protecting people from Lana. While it still has some nice heartfelt moments, especially when Auntie Whispers does end up actually feeling touched that Lana still wants to stay with her, which again, I would probably critique that Auntie Whispers could have used the bell to exorcise the demon at any time, but again, Auntie Whispers said, I guess you don't need me anymore when she was exorcised, so she could have been acting out of selfishness, and that she was afraid that once the demon left, that Lana would leave her. So, I'm willing to somewhat forgive that, because at the very least, it's clear she does care about Lana and wanted her to be safe, but overall, even then, it still does not detract from the heartfelt moment throughout the, it doesn't detract from the heartfelt moments throughout the episode. And by the end, but at the same time, it also helps set up that the boys are slowly losing hope, and the Beast is very much hot on their tail. And ultimately, that's exemplified, like I said, in Babes in the Wood, when things finally come to a head, they've run out of options, and it's finally come to the point when Greg decides to make a deal with the Beast if just to save his brother. So, yeah, overall, both are good episodes. One contains the zaniness while still kind of showcasing how bad things are getting, and the other one pretty much showcases everything coming to a head, and finally them having to face the Beast head on, if just to find a way to get home. And so yeah, I think that's really about it. I can't think of anything else to say. Most of it would probably be rambling anyway, but I hope you enjoyed the video anyway, because next time we meet, we are going to be finally reaching the end of our long journey, as we see how the brothers Wirt and Gregg entered into the unknown, and how they ultimately escape it, as we finally reach the end of Over the Garden Wall. So till then, I hope you have a good night. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next week. Take care.